Objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the subcommittee at any time. The subcommittee is meeting today to hear testimony on examining the implementation of the Compact of Free Association Amendments Act of 2024. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chairman and the ranking minority member. I therefore ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they're submitted in accordance with Committee Rule 3.0. Without objection, so ordered. I will now recognize myself for an opening statement. Talofa lava and good morning. We are here today to examine the implementation of Compact of Free Association Amendments Act of 2024 passed by Congress earlier this year in March. The Compacts of Free Association, or COFA, are the foundation for our special relationship with the Freely Associated States, or FAS. The FAS comprise of 3 sovereign Pacific Island countries, which are the Republic of Palau, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the Federated States of Micronesia. The COFA agreements are mutually beneficial agreements, U.S. with access to extraordinary security rights in return for U.S. economic assistance and defense guarantees. These security rights include the right to build U.S. bases and military installations and the authority to deny access to the FAS by the military forces of any third nation, known as strategic denial. The COFA agreements enable the U.S. to better protect the U.S. homeland while providing the FAS with resources for improving economic and democratic resiliency. The 38-year history of the COFA agreements are a success story of America's commitment to the Pacific allies and the Indo-Pacific region. This story is enshrined in our mutual values and shared interests. As democracies, the U.S. and FAS partnership under COFA serves as a beacon for pushing back against authoritarianism and malign influence. These goals of strong democracy, rule of law, and economic resiliency are also sustained by economic assistance grants and trust fund contributions for health, education, and infrastructure, among other essential public programs and services. These programs represent our appreciation for the great challenges, accomplishments of the people of FAS in partnership with the U.S., and our continued cooperation and mutual success on the world stage. At a time of increasing aggression by the People's Republic of China under the rule of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, it's more important now than ever to preserve the U.S.-FAS strategic partnership our other allies in the region also rely on to preserve peace through strength. The CCP continues to attempt to undermine this relationship through influence operations and economic coercion. Congress' timely passage of the COFA Amendments Act and successful renewal of the COFA agreements speaks to the U.S. commitment to preserving our special relationship with our FAS allies and to countering the malign activities of the CCP. However, there's still more left to be done. The U.S. must remain committed to following through on obligations promised under the COFA Amendments Act. I'm proud to have co-chaired the House Committee on Natural Resources Indo-Pacific Task Force. I have worked tirelessly with co-chair Gregorio Kilili Sablan and with my colleagues who served as members of the task force to help pave the way for the timely renewal of the COFA agreements. I'm therefore gravely concerned to see that there are several key provisions of the COFA Amendments Act that have not been implemented in a timely manner, consistent with the clearly expressed intent of Congress and agreements signed by the President. We are joined today by witnesses from each of the FAS governments so that we can hear from them their concerns and how the delays in implementation have impacted the FAS governments and their citizens, and to confirm our readiness to meet mutual obligations. We've also invited witnesses from the relevant agencies within the administration to help us find answers to why these provisions have not been implemented and what they are doing to address the delays. I urge the administration to continue to work with Congress and provide what Congress needs for overseeing the implementation process. Our Pacific allies deserve to see promises fulfilled in a timely manner. To be clear, examining these challenges to implementation does downplay the importance of COFA. Oversight and accountability will ensure that the COFA agreements continue to serve as a pillar of our relationship with FAS for decades to come. By ensuring COFA is implemented correctly and in a timely manner, we are signaling to the region that the U.S. remains a reliable and committed partner. Thank you to our witnesses from the administration and the FAS for appearing before us today. I look forward to their testimonies and finding a way to address the challenges raised during this hearing. The chair now recognizes the ranking member for any statement.
Thank you so very much, Madam Chair. And I want to welcome all of our witnesses today, especially our friends, the ambassadors from the freely associated states of the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and Palau. Last year, I had the privilege to visit the Blue Continent. You generously shared stories, policy issues and concerns, and the cultural knowledge from each of your beautiful nations. I saw firsthand how the special relationship between your nations and the United States benefits communities on both sides of the Pacific. The compacts of free association between the United States and the freely associated states, or FAS, are at the heart of that special relationship. This March, when President Biden signed the 2024 Compacts of Free Associations Amendment Acts into law, it was the culmination of months, if not years, of negotiations between the United States and the FAS, as well as hard work in both chambers of the Congress. I want to commend both you, Representative Radaragan, and Representative Sablan, for your leadership in educating the rest of us on the importance of these compacts. I especially want to extend my gratitude to Chairman Westerman for taking me and our colleagues to the nations and for the efforts that you have led to make sure that we could secure passage of these essential agreements. The compacts benefit both parties tremendously. We rely on the freely associated states to help us regarding the People's Republic of China's both economic threats and security threats. I recall a video of the illegal Chinese overfishing of some of the territorial waters and the response to this trespass. As part of the compacts, the federal programs and service agreements provide FAS citizens with essential services such as disaster assistance, weather forecasts, and postal services. I am pleased that negotiations to implement the various federal programs and service agreements are complete, or soon will be in the case of the Marshall Islands. However, Congress must take one final action to bring the Palau Agreement into force. I look forward to working with you, Chairman Westerman, and our colleagues in both chambers to address this final detail and close the books legislatively on renewing the compacts of free association with our allies and friends in the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and Palau for another 20 years. Now we must make sure that the United States implements, because the signed document isn't enough. We need to make sure we implement the commitments we made in the renewed compacts. I want to first address Veteran Affairs Services, which was one of the key provisions added in the 2024 compacts. We met with many veterans during our trip, and they shared with us their stories and their commitment to serving the United States, but also what they need to see in return. As I always say, it is not enough to thank our veterans for their services. We must provide them with the services they have earned. So while FAS citizens enlist and serve in the United States military at higher rates than mainland U.S. residents, they often do not receive the same benefits because of the distance from VA facilities. They've had to travel to Hawaii or Guam to receive those services. We owe those U.S. veterans the same debt, however, of services as veterans living on the U.S. mainland. The new compacts will address the service gap by extending VA services directly to FSA veterans in their home nations, but there is still work to do to make this a reality. We need to make sure that those services are actually available at the different nations, and in fact, the islands throughout the Pacific. I look forward to hearing from the Departments of Defense and Veterans Affairs on their efforts to improve access to medical services. Our partnerships with the FAS have formed a bedrock of U.S.-Pacific cooperation for nearly 4 decades. As we continue under the renewed compact, we must recognize that the People's Republic of China, PRC, is not finished with its efforts to undermine this critical partnership. All areas of our government, not just the Department of Defense, should be mindful of this threat and of the pressures the PRC continues to exert on the FAS economies to increase its influence. I look forward to hearing from the Departments of State and Interior, which each of these efforts we've discussed today stand. So with that, I will conclude my remarks and look forward to hearing the testimony from our witnesses. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The chair now recognizes Chairman Westerman for 5 minutes for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. As we all know, the U.S. holds a special relationship with the Republic of Palau, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the Federated States of Micronesia, that's collectively known as the FAS. This relationship with our Pacific allies is forged through the Compact of Free Association, or COFA, agreements that we have with each of these countries. The compacts are the cornerstone of U.S. leadership in the Pacific and represent our capacity for promoting peace through strength amid increasing aggression by the People's Republic of China and attempts by the PRC to undermine U.S. leadership. It is more important now than ever to preserve our special relationship with the FAS. This hearing today recognizes the importance of our FAS relationships and the critical times that we are in. I would like to take a moment to also recognize the great bipartisan work done by this committee on this issue. My colleagues and I have worked tirelessly to ensure a timely renewal of the COFA agreements. In the past year, we held 4 oversight hearings on COFA and moved the Compact of Free Association Amendments Act of 2024 through regular order. We overcame challenges that came with turning the administration's legislative proposal into legislation that meets U.S. interests in a fiscally responsible manner. I'm also proud to have led a historic bipartisan congressional delegation to the Pacific Islands in August of 2023, marking our continued commitment to our FAS partners. We saw firsthand the strength of the U.S. and FAS partnerships, and we witnessed the ways in which the PRC is attempting to spread its oppressive and malign influence. I also want to especially recognize the hard work done by my colleagues, Representative Rodawagan and Representative Sablan, as co-chairs of the Indo-Pacific Task Force. The task force was critical in ensuring that we could overcome any obstacles with COFA renewal. When Congress passed the COFA renewal legislation in March 2024, the committee knew that the job was not over. As important as it is to renew, it is equally important to conduct oversight on the implementation of the legislation. And I hope we are as rigorous and unified in our oversight as we were in passing COFA. Congress must continue to exercise its oversight responsibilities to ensure that the COFA provisions are carried out in a manner that Congress intended. It is alarming to see that several key provisions of the COFA Amendments Act have yet to be implemented by the administration. We have yet to see the Department of Veterans Affairs carry out any of the services in the FAS that it was charged with under COFA. I find this unacceptable, but somewhat not surprising under this VA administration that seems to have forgotten that their job is to serve all of our veterans. The COFA agreements provide FAS citizens with the opportunity to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces. The citizens of the FAS enlist at higher rates than U.S. states and with high distinction. Congress included the authorization for veteran services in the FAS to recognize the great contribution and sacrifice by the people of the FAS in protecting the U.S. homeland. It is therefore imperative that we ensure that these services are carried out in a timely manner. We must take care of all of our veterans. Furthermore, it is concerning that the administration has yet to formally convene the interagency group as required under the COFA Amendments Act. The interagency group is essential for improving interagency coordination on COFA and addressing any challenges in implementation. I hope the administration witnesses today can provide us information and an agenda with timelines for the formal convening of the interagency group. I'm also deeply concerned that the administration has yet to transmit to Congress a signed federal program and services agreement with Palau and the Marshall Islands. While it appears that we can anticipate a formal signing of the FPSA with Palau in the coming weeks, we're now at a point where congressional action may be needed to prevent a lapse in services for Palau. The administration has requested for Congress to provide an extension for the existing Palau FPSA as they are unable to complete the new agreement before the end of the fiscal year. As Congress reviews the administration's request, I hope the administration witnesses today will provide us with the information needed to fully understand the request. Again, thank you to our witnesses for being here today for this important hearing. I look forward to hearing your testimony and for our discussion, and I yield back.
Now I will introduce our witnesses for our first panel. Mr. Taylor Ruggles, Senior Advisor, U.S. Department of State. Mr. John Brewer, Director, Office of Insular and International Affairs, U.S. Department of the Interior. Mr. Anka Lee, Deputy Assistant Secretary, U.S. Department of State of Defense. And Dr. Miguel LaPuz, Special Assistant, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Let me remind the witnesses that under committee rules, they must limit their oral statements to 5 minutes, but their entire statement will appear in the hearing record. To begin your testimony, press the talk button on the microphone. We use timing lights. When you begin, the light will turn green. When you have 1 minute left, the light will turn yellow. And at the end of 5 minutes, the light will turn red. And I will ask you to please complete your statement. I will also allow all witnesses on the panel to testify before member questioning. The chair now recognizes Mr. Ruggles for 5 minutes.
Talofa, Chairwoman Radewagen, Ranking Member Leggett-Fernandez, Committee Chairman Westerman, Representative Case, and other distinguished members of the House Natural Resources Subcommittee on Indian and Insular Affairs. My name is Taylor Ruggles. I'm the State Department's Senior Advisor for COFA implementation. I want to thank you for this opportunity to testify before you today. I'm grateful for the bipartisan support of this subcommittee and indeed the committee itself under Chairman Westerman's leadership regarding the Compacts of Free Association with the Freely Associated States, or FAS, namely the Federated States of Micronesia, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the Republic of Palau. And I'm pleased to see Congress' continued interest in the Freely Associated States. Without a question, the passage of the Compact of Free Association Amendments Act of 2024 and the entry into force of the 2023 Compact-related agreements have materially strengthened the relationships between the United States and the Freely Associated States. U.S. economic assistance helps the Freely Associated States to withstand political and economic pressure in an era of strategic competition. And with Ambassador Laura Stone's arrival in the Marshall Islands in July, All three of the freely associated states have Senate-confirmed ambassadors in place. Our relationships are also strengthened by the connections between our people. Many citizens of the freely associated states now live in America, where they're part of communities in Hawaii, Oregon, California, Texas, Arkansas, Guam, and many other states and territories. The high rates of U.S. military service by citizens of the freely associated states are points of pride and powerful symbols of our close relationships. Our partners from the FAS have pointed to the importance of postal services provided under the COFA-related agreements as crucial to maintaining ties with family and friends living in the United States and serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. We continue to foster our close relationship with these countries by engaging with FAST leaders at every opportunity. Deputy Secretary Kurt Campbell held bilateral meetings with all three leaders on August 28th during the Pacific Islands Forum meetings in Tonga, which included a joint statement with Japanese Parliamentary Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, Komura Masahiro, that the United States and Japan intend to explore the possibility of a joint collaboration to remove oil from World War II sunken vessels in the Truk Lagoon and the Federated States of Micronesia. And then on September 3rd, the United States announced plans to provide $20 million to Palau. These funds would help the government of Palau continue to invest in its people and support the government's ambitious program of reform. USAID, for its part, is working closely with Palau to develop a memorandum of understanding to enhance Palau's disaster preparedness and response capabilities. I'm pleased to report that the United States and Palau have completed negotiations on a new Federal Programs and Services Agreement, or FPSA. We are now engaged in internal processes to approve the text for signature, which we hope will happen in the coming weeks. Moreover, we're very close to finalizing the FPSA with the Marshall Islands. And Chairman Westerman, I want to assure you that the first meeting of the Interagency Group on the Freely Associated States, or IAG, was held in April of this year, during which the duties of the IAG were discussed. IAG members were briefed on the COFA agreements as well as COFA-related legislation. During that meeting, the IAG members selected USAID Assistant Administrator Michael Schiffer to serve on the Joint Economic and Management Committee with the Federated States of Micronesia. A second meeting of the IAG will be held in 2 days' time on Thursday, September 12th. The IAG will receive updates on U.S. government activities, both those related to implementation of the agreements and other activities implemented under U.S. statutes that further the bilateral relationship. Now, as we move forward on implementing the COFA-related agreements and statutory authorities, we remain cognizant of the challenges facing the FAS, PRC economic pressure on Palau and the Marshall Islands, both of which maintain diplomatic relations with Taiwan, is frequently reported. More generally, the PRC continuously attempts to increase its influence in the region through development aid and proposed security arrangements. The effects of climate change are clearly seen in the islands. In January, massive waves flooded over a U.S. military facility in the Marshall Islands, highlighting the vulnerability of Pacific atolls to rising sea levels, tidal events, storm surges, and waves. The challenges the FAST face are numerous, and we continue to support partners in the FAST with needed programs and services. I welcome your questions and look forward to discussing implementation of the COFA-related agreements with you. Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Brewer for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, Ranking Member, Chair Westerman, and members of the Subcommittee on Indian and Insular Affairs, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the implementation of the Compact of Free Association Amendments Act of 2024. I am the Director of the Office of Insular Affairs, the office responsible for administering economic assistance provided under the Compacts of Free Association and related agreements with the Federated States of Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, and Palau, collectively the Freely Associated States, or FAS. Strong ties between the United States and these Pacific islands form the foundation of U.S. engagement in the Pacific. The Interior Department is pleased to play a leading role in implementing the economic assistance provisions under the new compact-related amended agreements, which extend $6.5 billion in economic assistance to the FAS over the next 20 years. Following President Biden's signing of the Compact Act on March 9, 2024, Interior and its federal partners have worked tirelessly to implement the new agreements. This fiscal year, $825 million has been provided to the FAS for Compact Trust Fund contributions, special purpose funds, and sector grant support under the new Compact-related agreements and the Compact Act. Section 208D of the Compact Act provides an outline to revitalize the interagency group on freely associated states. I am happy to report that on September 12th, this Thursday, the interagency group on freely associated states will hold its second meeting of the year. We look forward to providing the interagency group's first annual report to the White House and to Congress in March 2025. Since enactment of the Compact amendments in March, Interior and its interagency and freely associated state partners have prioritized meetings of the bilateral committees required under the new agreements. The new Compact agreements require the establishment of bilateral committees to review and approve plans of use for economic assistance from the United States. Both the U.S. and the FAS have made the necessary appointments to all required committees. Interior Secretary Holland is in the process of notifying the appropriate committees of Congress of these appointments. In the meantime, these committees are fully operational, are meeting regularly, and have successfully adjudicated plans from the FAS governments for the use of economic assistance and the disbursement of grants. In the coming weeks, I will chair meetings of the Compact Trust Fund Committee with the Federated States of Micronesia and with the Marshall Islands. Again, the U.S., FSM, and RMI have each all made necessary appointments to the respective trust fund committees. In fiscal year 2024, the U.S. contributed $250 million to the Micronesia Trust Fund and $200 million to the Marshall Islands Trust Fund under the new agreements. In fiscal year 2024, the U.S. also contributed $50 million to the Palau Compact Trust Fund under the new Compact Review Agreement. The federal government and the government of each of the FAS have a responsibility to effectively and efficiently apply the new resources provided under the new Compact-related agreements and the Compact Act. Interior is committed to doing its part to fulfill the terms of the 3 amended Compact agreements. We are also confident that working together with the interagency and our FAS partners, we can ensure that the FAS thrive in a free and open Indo-Pacific. Madam Chair, Ranking Member, Congressman Westerman, it is a pleasure to appear before your subcommittee. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
I thank the witness for their testimony. The chair now recognizes Mr. Lee for 5 minutes.
Chair Radowagen, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez, and Committee Chair Mr. Westerman, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I'm Anka Lee, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia. Thank you so much for inviting me to testify today about the importance of the Compacts of Free Association, or COFA, for the Department of Defense. The Compact states play an essential role in enabling the Defense Department to implement its national defense strategy writ large, as well as the U.S. strategic vision for the Indo-Pacific region. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today about how COFA underpins our national security interests in the Indo-Pacific. We're grateful for Congress for approving for COFA nearly a year ago with strong bipartisan support. Members of this subcommittee, along with the full committee, were instrumental in leading the way with advocating for the Compact's final passage, and we immensely appreciate your advocacy. The renewal of the Compact honors our commitments to the people of these states and facilitates our continued strategic partnership with the Palauan, Micronesian, and Marshallese partners. These partnerships are critical to our ongoing operations, our ability to test and exercise capabilities, and execution of multilateral exercises, such as COA Moana, COPE North, Pacific Partnership, and Valiant Shield. all of which were hosted by compact states. Another example is our civic action team in Palau. For the past 50 years, rotational detachments, engineers, and medical teams have fueled people-to-people ties between the United States and Palau. The cooperative work of these teams with Palauan counterparts have facilitated larger force rotations associated with locally hosted U.S. exercises. Now, this subcommittee is very well versed in the strategic environment, but I think it is really worth reiterating and noting the People's Republic of China, or PRC, and how it remains to be the most serious challenge to our national security interests and our work to preserve a free and open Indo-Pacific region. The PRC seeks to expand its influence in the compact states and is increasing its coercive activities throughout the region. From illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing to coercion aimed at sovereign nations that have diplomatic ties with Taiwan, the PRC's provocative behavior attempts to erode the strategic partnerships of the United States with our closest friends and allies. In this context, it is essential that we continue to enhance our engagement in the region through an interagency approach, while working alongside like-minded partners and allies like Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and the Republic of Korea. Your support for COFA has enabled the Defense Department to bolster its engagement with the compact states by providing a tangible embodiment of the United States' enduring, decades-long commitment to sustaining the FAS. COFA provides assurances to the Republic of Palau, to the Republic of Marshall Islands, and to the Federated States of Micronesia that the United States is present and that we are working to secure a stable and free Indo-Pacific region. The compact states should not be viewed as solely as recipients. Far from it. They share with the United States our values and our vision for the future of the region. Secretary Lloyd Austin has discussed our common priorities with the presidents of each of the compact states in bilateral meetings at the Pentagon during his tenure, highlighting how critical these relationships are to the department's Indo-Pacific strategy. Contributions by the FAS are many, often, for example, contributing higher enlistment per capita than many US states. Also critical are the military use and operating rights agreements that we hold with the compact states. These delineate the Department of Defense cooperation with and in the compact states. The Defense Department is engaging in the Pacific Islands in a renewed way, alongside interagency partners, demonstrating our strengthened commitment to the Pacific Islands region. The department is diligently expanding its work in the Pacific Islands through expanded exercises, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief efforts, work to strengthen the Pacific Islands' capabilities to exercise maritime domain awareness, and expanding security cooperation initiatives writ large. We are continuing to engage in a deliberate way with the interagency, as well as like-minded partners and allies to ensure that this work continues. Thank you so much again for allowing me to testify and for your support of COFA, and I look forward to answering your questions.
I thank the witness for their testimony. The chair now recognizes Dr. LaPuz for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Radewagen, Ranking Member Leger Fernandez, and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss VA's efforts in implementing the Compact of Free Association Amendments Act of 2024. Since March, VA has been urgently working across government, including the White House and the Departments of State, Interior, and Defense, to develop a comprehensive strategy and approach to assess healthcare delivery options in the area and develop the best path forward. As a result of this work, yesterday, VA announced that we are now ready to begin direct coordination with the Republic of Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of Marshall Islands. During the next several months, we will be regularly meeting with the FAST governments to conduct a comprehensive environmental scan to review the current state of hospital care and medical services within the FAS. This coordination period, which precedes official negotiations, will provide us with critical information about the local veteran populations and needs for care in the region. We have sent letters to each of the governments to begin this important collaboration, which we expect to last through the end of this calendar year. VA will coordinate with the Department of Defense leaders to get their expert inputs on delivering care in the FAS. We will also work with the Departments of State and Interior to draft and ultimately finalize the action memorandum. This is required before VA can officially begin negotiations on international agreements. Once those steps are completed, likely between January and March of 2025, VA will begin formal negotiations on the final agreements with each of the FAS governments. All of this work will be done with the ultimate goal of ensuring that the veterans in those nations receive the care that they have earned and deserve. VA is exploring a comprehensive care model for how FAS veterans can access hospital care and medical services to align generally with how VA provides care to veterans living in the U.S. Implementation may look different depending on agreements with the FAS governments, current infrastructure, and the varying degree of reliance on the ways veterans can access care. In addition to collaboration with the Departments of Interior and State to conduct outreach to and enter agreements with each of the FAS governments, VA may also need to collaborate with the United States Postal Service to explore solutions for mailing prescriptions or controlled substances to FAS veterans. In conclusion, VA is fully committed to delivering hospital care, medical services, and beneficiary travel benefits to FAS veterans. While we finalize next steps towards implementation, we want eligible veterans who live in the FAS to know they can enroll for VA healthcare and continue receiving VA healthcare at VA medical facilities in the U.S., including Guam. Eligible veterans can also access other VA services, including reimbursement for healthcare for service-connected disabilities through the Foreign Medical Program, disability benefits, educational assistance, and pension services. Chairwoman Radewagen, this concludes my testimony. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today and for your continued support of our mission. I'm happy to respond to any question you or the committee may have.
I thank the witness for their testimony. The chair will now recognize members for 5 minutes for questions. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. Mr. Ruggles, additional agreements and acts of Congress the administration has requested to implement the COFA Amendments Act of 2024 for Palau include both extension of the current COFA II Palau Federal Programs and Services Agreement, as well as technical amendments deemed necessary to authorize the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation to operate as agreed under the COFA III FPSA in Palau. At the same time, the administration asserts the COFA Amendments Act of 2024 needs to be augmented by additional agreements and acts of Congress authorizing future Palau FPSA agreements to enter into force or be amended. The administration's legal position seems at odds with the limitation of the COFA II and III approvals of Palau FPSA and amendments by Congress to portions thereof rather than the entire agreements, as well as the COFA authorization of the 2010 COFA Review Agreement, which also altered the FPSA. This legal interpretation also would anomalously impute to the President, Congress, and the courts an intention to treat Palau differently than the FSM and RMI COFA III based on an ambiguous and hyper-technical interpretation of variances between the three COFA agreements. If the State Department's assessment is that the COFA Amendments Act of 2024 does not provide requisite authority for its implementation, does that mean that the Department and administration identified but failed to address and resolve deviations from its own interpretation of these provisions in the negotiations and/or transmittal to Congress?
Thank you for your question, Representative Radewagen. First of all, again, I would just want to reiterate our appreciation for the committee's support for implementation of these agreements, and appreciate the Congress considering the administration's anomaly request, which would ensure uninterrupted provision of federal programs and services to Palau as we complete the process to bring the new agreement into effect. Palau's FPSA is subject to different statutory requirements than the Marshall Islands and FSM. There are existing statutory requirements outside of the COFA Amendments Act that regard certain agreements that would require an act of Congress before they can be brought into force, including some that would apply to a new FPSA with Palau. Now, in consultation with staff on this committee, and as well as on the Senate oversight committees, we're working to provide an option that would make Palau as similar as possible to the provisions that govern RMI and FSM. And so our aim, and I believe it's our shared aim, is to have a common set of requirements for Palau with FSM and RMI going forward. We believe the anomaly request we provided would accomplish that, as well as ensure that there would be uninterrupted services for Palau when its existing FPSA concludes at the end of this month. Thank you.
If the Congress did not interpret the relevant provisions in the same manner as the Department, did the Department advise the President and/or Congress of its interpretation before the Palau COFA was transmitted to Congress?
Well, there's been frequent communication between the administration and Congress, both at the member and staff level, about the COFA agreements. I'm certainly not looking to point fingers, but we have had an exchange of texts over the course of months, and some of the texts that were previously provided by the administration were not accepted, and so we're happy to work. Again, I think we have a shared commitment to bring these agreements into effect, and we're looking forward to working with you and others to make sure that we support Palau. Thank you.
What is the intent behind the authorization request? If seeking to expedite FPSA implementation, why did the administration not request Congress to waive the 90-day congressional review period?
In the anomaly request, there is a notwithstanding language that has been proposed that would waive the requirement for subsequent congressional action to ratify the Palau FPSA. We tried, as I said, we're trying to conform Palau's FPSA as much as possible to RMI and FSM rather than create a unique structure with Palau. For simplicity's sake, in other words, we're trying to keep all three agreements as much alike as possible.
Thank you. I have many other questions, Mr. Ruggles, but I'm way out of time. I now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the testimony. And I'll start with you, Dr. LaPuz. Thank you very much, did I pronounce that correctly? Thank you very much for your comments and for pointing out, and people in the audience know, the great patriotism that we see coming from the freely associated states. I come from the state of New Mexico, and we also have a higher than average participation in the military. Latinos, it's a minority state. Latinos and Native Americans are incredibly patriotic. So we have a lot of veterans in New Mexico, similar to the way we noticed and that you pointed out. So one of the issues that I'm real concerned about is we are actually in a moment right now where we have a shortfall, almost $3 billion. Shortfall for the VA immediately, and about another $12 billion, I believe, for the next year. And that's because we expanded services, and veterans are now saying, I need to apply for these services, and they've earned those. So the fact that there is a shortfall is because people are now taking advantage of what they've earned. We are in a battle right now because there is a continuing resolution that Republicans have put forward that does not fund the shortfall. So the very first action that we took, they did not prioritize funding the VA shortfall, which I think is just shameful because you pointed out in your testimony, they've earned these services. So my question to you is, does this shortfall impact veterans living in the freely associated states? Does it impact what they might see? I mean, because is it something that we're just going to be impacted with here in the, in the continent, or is it something that we'll see throughout the VA, including in the federally associated states?
So first of all, let me join you in thanking the residents and citizens of the freely associated states because of their high participation in our military. We in the VA and the Secretary is committed to ensure that we fund the requirements of the expansion of the services to the citizens or the veterans in the freely associated states. Now, having said that, I am sure that, there will be a different kind of conversation that will be happening that unfortunately I will not be able to speak up to in reference to the discussion regarding budget. So
you are not able to discuss the shortfall, which means Congress. I mean, it's our job to raise this, and I think that that is a concern. And it should be a concern for all of us. It should be a priority for everybody in Congress, both parties, to fund the shortfall. Mr. Lee, thank you so very much for pointing out the importance of the relationship, that the relationship really goes both ways, right? And that there is strategic importance. And when I was there and looked at our bases and spoke with the representatives from the sovereign nations, it struck me, what if we didn't have this, right? Which points us to why we should act to make sure we implement all of our obligations, which is some of the problems that we're trying to talk about here. But could you imagine, or could you describe to us, is it even imaginable what it would be like if we did not have the compacts with the freely associated states and the reciprocal arrangements? What would it be like out in the Pacific?
Well, thank you so much.
Military strategic viewpoint.
Thank you so much again. And you've all said it better than I have. It's just we know the PRC is aggressive. They're pushing very hard. And we have to compete with them toe to toe. And we are showing up and we are able to demonstrate not only we are offering a choice for our partners in the region, but we are also getting something in return, which is the ability to exercise our activities, our right to defend the region. And without that commitment, we will be opening a path for PRC to move forward. We do not want that to happen. So this is really critical for our national security and our strategic interests.
So if we are concerned about China's aggression, about the CCP's aggression, if we're concerned about their military aggression, their national security aggression, their attacks on everything from our cybersecurity to our commerce, we need to be concerned about honoring the compacts and honoring our obligations to the freely associated states. Is that correct?
That is correct, because we are ensuring the stability, prosperity, and security of a region that is going to be underwriting so much economic activity and growth for the next generation. This is our responsibility, and we take it very seriously.
And I think that there is a strong bipartisan support for this obligation, for meeting it. I look forward to addressing the concerns that we're going to hear, especially later. And with that, I yield back, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I thank the witness for their testimony. The chair will now recognize Mr. Case for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Ruggles, the bill reauthorizing the COFA called for the establishment of a unit on the FAS in the State Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs. Is that been established at this point?
Thank you very much, Representative Case. The department has started the internal procedures to decide best how to stand up that unit. If I can be candid with you, prior to becoming senior advisor, I was the State Department's director for Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific from 21 to 23. And during that period, we started the process of setting up new embassies in Solomon Islands, Tonga, and just this year, Vanuatu, and staffed those embassies as well. And so the positions we've prioritized initially have been in the field, but I'm cognizant as well that we need a support structure in Washington to manage these relationships and provide support to our embassies. So we're very much focused on ensuring that we provide that support, including through the unit that Congress mandated.
Yeah, well, I think our judgment was that you needed to have that focus for the FAS specifically through the creation of a separate unit. So I appreciate the effort on the other parts of the Pacific Islands, but this was our priority, that it be more highlighted, more organized, and less ancillary within the Department of State. So what is your timing on actually creating that unit?
I should have elaborated, Representative. In Palau, for example, I think we've we've increased the U.S. direct hire presence in our embassy in Palau by 83% in the past 2 years, and similarly in FSM have added several positions, U.S. direct hire positions. So it's not just the rest of the Pacific. But again, I can assure you that this is front and center on my and Assistant Secretary Crittenbrink's attention, and have every desire to move forward as soon as possible in establishing the unit.
Okay, again, this is for the unit in Washington, D.C., not in the field. We're not talking about the field. We're talking about coordination here. Correct?
Yes, sir, you're right. I was just illustrating that in terms of personnel and full-time equivalent positions, there's a limit of positions available. And in the past 2 years, we've been very much focused on standing up our presence in the field, and that has meant that we've had to defer some growth in Washington. But I certainly accept and understand that we need to also look to Washington as well, which we will do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee, thanks for highlighting the Defense Department's partnerships. Are there plans to expand? And by the way, I do want to commend you on the Pacific Action Team in Palau, which has just been, really a good effort all around. I've visited them and seen them in action, and I think they are very well respected and integrated. Are there plans to do that as well in the FSM and the Marshall Islands?
Sir, thank you so much. Anyway, for your thought leadership, also support the department's work over years, and really appreciate and grateful for that. You're absolutely right. The CAT teams are inspirational in many ways, the work that they do, building classrooms, building schools, facilitating people-to-people ties for 50 years. It's been not just an instrument of hard defense power, but soft power. We are certainly looking to consider what options there might be in the future to replicate this kind of work. And I know that I'll be working with my colleagues closely to consider options in the future. It is something that we would like to do and plan to do, and would look forward to working with you and coordinate with you to see what's possible, sir.
Yeah, we'd love to work with you on that, because that's, cost benefit is about the best in the entire United States government as far as I can see. Dr. LaPuz, I mean, you've heard the remarks in the opening statement, which express frustration with the pace of the extension of the COFA renewal benefits for our veterans. I've expressed this to you along with my colleagues in letters to the secretary, and the response back was, frankly, not inspiring in terms of pace of getting things done. So it's good that you've finally set up the coordinating committees. But do you have a sense of when you can actually complete the coordination, the negotiations, and the agreements, and have something ready for Congress if any congressional action is required to implement what we now have in law?
So soon after the signing of the law, the Secretary has actually directed the formation of a working group to look at all of the available options for the Secretary to exercise the discretion or discretionary authority that is granted by the law. And recently, the Secretary has made a decision, and truly it's my pleasure to actually share with the committee that this is, the decision of the Secretary is to go for a comprehensive model of care that is going to be in alignment with how veterans living in the continental United States are receiving care.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and my time is up, so I don't want to, I can go to a second to ask further questions, but my question was, I understand all of that. Do you have a sense of timing? How long is it going to take you to actually get from where we are today to an agreement? Like, are we talking about 6 months? Are we talking about a year? What is it?
So, sir, we are going to be in direct collaboration with the FAS governments beginning soon, very soon, until maybe the end of the calendar year. So then we will have a good environmental scan and understanding of the veteran population in the FAS nations. And then the next thing that we're going to do is prepare the action memorandum that is going to be required for us to enter into international agreements with the FAS governments.
Okay,
and
thanks.
that will take a little bit more time. So.
Okay, we don't have all that much more time because these benefits are due and veterans need this help. They're in a very difficult situation. We all understand. So we're going to stay in touch with you on this, but I would urge alacrity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank the witness for their testimony. The chair will now recognize Mr. Lamalfa for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that we're having this important oversight hearing on the implementation of the COFA amendments and that we're able to successfully pass earlier this year, and you know, keep accountability up on that, because indeed it's important that the U.S. have its commitments with its allies reliably kept. So thank you. Sorry, I'm kind of parachuting in here a little late on that, so if I say anything redundant, please forgive me, but let's see, let me, the COFA Amendments Act of 2024 includes provisions that allow for FAS citizens residing in the U.S. to have the ability to gain certain federal programs. So these agencies need, of course, to issue updated guidance to reflect the newness of the law. So, Mr. Brewer, have all the relevant agencies issued guidance, or are there any agencies that have not yet done so? And if there are any agencies that have not issued guidance, what is the Department of Interior doing to make sure this happens in a timely manner?
Thank you very much for your question, Congressman. We are tracking this situation, and the relevant departments have issued their guidance. We are tracking that to ensure that it is being pushed down and out for the.
What? I'm sorry. Let me jump in there. So you're tracking that. So does that mean? I mean, more in the yes or no category. Have all the relevant agencies issued the guidance, or is there some that have not yet done?
To my understanding, sir, all the relevant agencies have issued the guidance. Okay. HHS, USDA, have SSI, SSA have all issued their guidance. We have actually also put that guidance on our website for public to have access to.
Okay, and so that's all fully fleshed out, and it's good to go.
That part, sir, we are tracking. It has been issued. We are following it. We are working closely with those relevant agencies.
I guess by tracking, do you mean that it's actually working as planned, people are accessing and all that such?
We are following that to see that. As I said, it's my understanding that that information is out and available to the public, and the relevant agencies are making sure that they provide the guidance and answer any questions that may come toward them.
Okay, all right, we'll go with that. Thank you, Mr. Brewer. The act would renew a system of agreements and support that has gone back more than 80 years. And many of our opinions around here, the Biden-Harris administration has repeatedly failed to take the threat of China very seriously, and their failure to implement key elements of the COFA Act in a timely manner demonstrates that. So when you have the People's Republic of China's aggressive tactics, we must work more to safeguard our interests and that of our alliances there. So upholding our end of the deal is extremely important with the freely associated states. Many of the delays in implementation of the COFA Act seem to be caused by issues that could be worked out by the congressionally mandated and outlined interagency working group, the IWG. So the Department of the Interior's website on the interagency group does not have any documents, calendars, or links that we can find, or is so, which might indicate a lack of staffing for the interagency group. I'm not sure. So, Mr. Brewer, what do you think are the delays at the Department of Interior in this regard?
Congressman, as I mentioned in my, as I stated in my opening statement, the interagency working group has met. They met in April. They will be meeting again this Thursday to carry out their responsibilities of management for the coordination of the of our efforts of COFA implementation. So
How many meetings has there been, or how often have they met
there have
since?
been this year. There have been two. Well, there's been one in April, and the next one will be this Thursday.
That's a bit of a gap, wouldn't you think?
We have been working diligently to get implementation done, and those were the meetings we were able to accomplish.
Okay, so you'll be meeting next week or so. I mean, my thrust of the question, what's causing the delay to have it jump from April all the way to mid-September? How come there could have been more work done in, June, July, somewhere in there, and moving up the pace?
Sir, in between the meetings, as you know, the Act is about 6 months old. In that time, we have been really focused on getting money out to the FAS, to establishing the various other committees, the Trust Fund Committee, which I chair. The FPSAs have been being worked on, so I wouldn't characterize it as a delay. It's just that we are moving very aggressively to get the work done that needs to be done for implementation. It says forming the committees and getting money out to the FAS nations.
All right, I better stop there. I'm afraid the chair is going to get me with that gavel there, so. Anyway, I appreciate it, and please keep us abreast of the progress, if you wouldn't mind. Maybe a couple weeks after this next meetup, so let me and the committee know, if you would, please. All right? Thank you so much. I yield back.
I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we will ask you to respond to these in writing. The first panel is now dismissed. The second panel may now be seated. Now I will introduce our witnesses for our second panel. His Excellency Hersey Kyota, Ambassador to the United States, Republic of Palau. His Excellency Jackson Soram, Ambassador to the U.S., Federated States of Micronesia. His Excellency Charles Paul, Ambassador to the United States, Republic of the Marshall Islands. Let me remind the witnesses that under committee rules, they must limit their oral statements to 5 minutes, but their entire statement will appear in the hearing record. To begin your testimony, please press the talk button on the microphone. We use timing lights. When you begin, the light will turn green. When you have 1 minute left, the light will turn yellow. And at the end of 5 minutes, the light will turn red, and I will ask you to please complete your statement. I will also allow all witnesses on the panel to testify before member questioning. The chair now recognizes Ambassador Kyota for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the subcommittee for inviting me to testify before this subcommittee. Before I begin, I'd like to thank, of course, he has left, but I'd like to thank Chairman Westerman and yourself, Madam Chair, ranking members, Ledger Fernandez, Co-Chair Sablan, and Congressman Case, and other distinguished members for your unwavering leadership throughout the whole process of the compact required 30-year anniversary review, from the negotiation to the final enactment of the Compact Act. Your efforts substantially benefited the United States as well as Palau. Thank you as well for the law's addition to the Compact Agreement that President Whips requested. The law greatly improved and strengthened the relationship between our nations. A top U.S. military commander once said that Palau is part of the U.S. homeland. Although it is now a sovereign nation, it is part of the homeland because the security right Palau has let the U.S. exercise under the Compact, and Palau is the closest part of the homeland to Asia. Your law would meet Palau's need much more than the Compact as originally entered into or through the 15th anniversary review. One of the most important improvements contemplates continuing the assistance after FY 2043 on the same terms instead of phasing out assistance. Another major advancement is upgrading U.S. executive branch attention to the freely associated states. Our status in relation to the United States is far closer than any other sovereign nation. I am pleased to report the successful conclusion of the talks on our Compact Federal Program and Service Agreement. The current agreement expired on September 30th. The Compact helpfully pre-approved the agreement, but approval is subject to a 90-day congressional review. So the State Department has asked for technical amendment. My government hope that you will try and pass the necessary language before the end of this month. We look forward to Veterans Affairs Department's draft agreement for the health care that veterans living in the freely associated states are entitled to under the law. As you know, Your law substantially broadened the mission of the Palau Economic Advisory Group. The Economic Advisory Group is meeting in Palau this week. I am also pleased to report that the plan required for spending FY 2024 financial assistance was found to be completed with requirement. The Department of Interior has worked with us to assure fulfillment of the provision of the Compact Review Agreement and the law. We greatly appreciate the Compact Act made freely associated states, citizens in the United States, eligible for additional education benefit, restore eligibility for programs open to the permanent residents, and sorry about this, and continue education of local agencies, education institution, federal officials regarding this will be needed. Federal understanding of the freely associated states' unique status is essential. We are encouraged by the initial effort of the interagency group on free association, associated state, and hope that the State Department will soon fulfill the requirement to reestablish a freely associated states office, and hope that your committee will continue oversight like this one today. Thank you, Wegokmal Sulang, for all that you have done for our nation's democracy and prosperity, for the peace, security of all Pacific nations, including United States and Taiwan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the witness for their testimony. The chair now recognizes Ambassador Soram for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair Radwakin, Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for convening this hearing and for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jackson Soram. I am honored to serve as the ambassador of the Federated States of Micronesia to the United States. The U.S. and the FSM enjoy a close relationship that has been strengthened through diplomatic, economic, and military partnership and commitments as part of the Compact of Free Association. Earlier this year, the U.S. government demonstrated this support through the enactment of the GOVA Amendments Act, and this law updates and extends economic assistance provisions of the compact between our two nations for an additional 20-year assistance provisions, 20-year period. It restores or extends other key benefits for FSM citizens in the United States. We are deeply grateful to this committee and to the Trump and Biden administrations for the years of work required for these achievements. Your dedication reinforces our mutual commitments to our enduring partnership and the fact that we have no greater friend than the United States. We are grateful that Congress approved an annual appropriation of $140 million for sector grants for the FSM in the law. This is a significant increase. Last week, we had our first in-person meeting with the U.S. under the framework of the Joint Economic Management Committee, or JEMCO. The Joint Committee has provisionally concurred with the FSM proposed sector grant allocations for FY 2025. We remain hopeful for JEMCO's final concurrence in the coming days. And it is evident in this transition period that there are bilateral challenges to overcome and implementation. The FSM is committed to working with the U.S. in this transition to the new agreements. In addition to extending the U.S. financial assistance and U.S. federal programs and services for the FSM, the law addresses several long-standing challenges for FSM citizens who live, work, and study in the U.S. and serve in the U.S. military. We are pleased FSM citizens residing lawfully in the U.S. are again eligible for key public benefits as a result of the bipartisan Compact Impact Fairness Act. Additionally, we are delighted the amended compact includes a bipartisan Care for COFA Veterans Act, which provides improvements to medical care access to veterans in the FAS. The law also ensures eligibility for Pell Grants and other education benefits for FSM students, which will strengthen the future of our country for generations to come. Since the enactment of the law, the FSM has engaged with federal agencies regarding compact implementation. We are pleased the Department of Education, Agriculture, Health and Human Services, and FEMA have issued guidance to reflect the changes in the updated compact. Overall, we are pleased with the progress on implementation, but are disappointed by the lack of engagement by the VA. The law establishes a one-year period following passage, during which the VA is directed to work with the FAS governments to assess options for required delivery of care to veterans residing in the FAS. We're very concerned that 6 months have elapsed without collaboration or communication on these initiatives, which are critical to the health of our veterans. Additionally, despite our outreach, the Social Security Administration has not released guidance on the eligibility of FSM citizens for supplemental security income. We remain hopeful implementation efforts can move forward quickly, given the impact of these programs for our citizens, and we stand ready to assist. The FSM appreciates the committee's commitment to the implementation of the COFA Amendment Act. We look forward to working with the Congress on implementation and exploring ways to bolster our relationship beyond the compact. Thank you again for the opportunity and for holding this hearing, and I look forward to answering questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the witness for their testimony. The chair now recognizes Ambassador Paul for 5 minutes.
Talofa and Yahweh, Madam Chairwoman Radowagan, Ranking Minority Member Ledger Fernandez, Chairman Westerman, Co-Chairman Case, and other distinguished members of this honorable committee. I must begin by saying como dada, as emphatically as I can, for your leadership in enacting the Compact Act and your additions to the agreement that it approved. The package meets Marshall Islands' needs more than ever before, greatly improving our nation's association. It addresses long-standing problems and includes provisions that would enable a deeper and more equitable partnership to endure for 20 years and longer. It not only secures our vast waters and airspace, it also helps ensure a free and open Pacific for all democratic nations, including Taiwan. Implementation is in its initial stages. There are still agreements being negotiated, including a revised agreement for certain U.S. services that we hope will be completed this month. And we are waiting for a draft agreement to enable the law's mandate for our veterans to receive health care in our islands or travel for care instead of having to live in the United States, the Philippines, or Canada. Madam Chair, we are pleased to have received a letter from the Secretary of Veteran Affairs outlining next steps in developing the said agreement to provide health care services to all deserving veterans residing in the Marshall Islands. In our islands, a new administration and parliament, Nilidale, took office in January. It would conclude these agreements, implement the agreements and laws enacted last year, and develop required plans. Last year's actions substantially and beneficially changed U.S. financial assistance. The most fundamental changes were in the trust fund for our people. The purpose was changed to 2 areas, with specific uses now determined by the RMI government and the Joint Trust Fund Committee ensuring fiscal integrity. Funds that had already been contributed will be used to benefit our people directly, instead of subsidizing the government. And the new contributions are for programs for the people from atolls adversely affected by U.S. nuclear bomb tests and nuclear waste disposal, and islands that have unmet claims regarding other U.S. military activities. Our plan is for the much greater general budgetary assistance for FY24 was found to be sound by the Joint Committee, and last week there was a helpful meeting with the committee regarding the FY25 plan. My government has named its members of the new working groups for the additional assistance for healthcare and to address increasing challenges of nature. We look forward to the U.S. government naming its members so that these committees can meet and begin their work. Plans are being developed for new assistance for infrastructure in the civilian areas of Kwajalein Atoll, which supplies much of the labor for the world's premier range on testing ICBMs, for accessing records, and for a museum regarding the U.S. nuclear program, and additional environmental programs. As I noted earlier, the new trust fund contributions will be used to address exceptional hardship and unmet needs. To use the words of U.S. Presidential Envoy Yoon in this committee's hearing on the legislation, and I quote, "islands that have been affected by nuclear tests," unquote. As he further testified regarding the people of these islands, and I quote, "they are suffering, which is why," end quote, "the new contributions," and I quote, "were put into the trust fund," end quote. We thank the committee for the Compact Act, reiterating the Compact agreements, enabling my government to seek measures regarding damage to property and injury to individuals from the nuclear programs not known at the time of the Compact, a changed circumstance petition, and requiring the U.S. government to engage in meaningful consultations on our joint tragic nuclear legacy. We will be making use of these provisions. Madam Chair, I have in my hands Nilidala Resolution 15ND1 that was passed unanimously 2 days ago in the RMI Nilidala. And I ask that this Nilidala resolution, urging the RMI government to file a changed circumstance petition, be included in the record.
So ordered.
Other greatly appreciated measures restored the eligibility of freely associated state citizens in the U.S. for several federal programs and entitled them to additional post-secondary educational assistance. Federal agencies must explain the law to state and territorial agencies and post-secondary educational institutions. The Compact Act also includes very important sections regarding the U.S. executive branch's handling of freely associated state matters. I conclude by thanking you, Madam Chair, and members of this honorable committee for your leadership and for this opportunity to testify before you. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
I thank the witness for their testimony. The chair will now recognize members for 5 minutes for questions. I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes. My question is for all witnesses. Has the Department of Veterans Affairs initiated negotiations for veterans services with your respective governments? And how has the delay in veterans services affected veterans from your respective countries? This is for all witnesses, please. Ambassador Kyota.
Madam Chairman, we have tried to reach out to VA. We haven't received anything, but I did receive some a letter addressed to President Whips from the VA. I received it last night, so I sent it to Palau, and it talks about the time where we can sit and discuss in more detail what Palau and VA can discuss and put them into use. But I must say that while the VA and Palau hasn't really started speaking in more detail, many of veterans living in Palau are suffering and they need medication. They need to travel to Guam or Hawaii, but most of them do not have enough resources to pay for their own ticket. You know, a flight from Palau to Hawaii is very, very expensive. So I hope that this letter to our president will open a negotiation or discussion real soon. Thank you.
Ambassador Soram.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. And firstly, let me join my other colleagues as well to thank the committee for the support that you have given throughout all these processes from the negotiations up till now in calling this meeting as well. The answer is no. We have not engaged with the VA on any negotiations on the agreement. As I stated in my statement, our concern relates to the timing, because the agreement calls for a 1-year duration. We're within 6-7 months now, and we have not heard anything. Now, that being said, I want to acknowledge the efforts of the first panel, particularly from the Department of Veterans Affairs, in laying out a plan. I think that is encouraging, but we have yet to see. Once again, as I said, timing is an issue here. We're given 1 year to complete the negotiations to work through all of this. So I hope we can keep that in mind. But again, answer is no, but looking forward to working with the VA on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ambassador Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Along with my colleagues from FSM and Palau, we too just received a letter from the Veteran Affairs Secretary. The letter was addressed to President Heine, and that has been forwarded to Madro. We look forward to working with the Veteran Affairs to see how we can move this along. We have veterans in the islands that they need the help, and the sooner we get there, the better it is for our veterans, for receiving the care that they earned and they deserve. Thank you.
I thank the witnesses for their testimony. I will now recognize Ranking Member Ledger Fernandez for 5 minutes.
Thank you, ambassadors, for your testimony. And thank you, Ambassador Kyota, for pointing out how expensive it is to travel, because it's not just the flight, right? Once you get to another island that's providing services or the mainland, you need to pay for housing. There are other costs that are involved, which is why it's so important to make sure that the services are available closer and as close as possible to where the veteran lives. Could you describe to me, it sounds like, it's a good thing we had this hearing. Sometimes hearings like just nudge, I call it WD-40, like Congress and each of us are responsible for having a huge can of WD-40. I have my little can of WD-40, I can do little things, but really, a chair of a subcommittee, a committee they have a really big can. And so I'm glad to hear that we have a letter, that we have a process set out for engaging in creating that plan. What are your expectations? Maybe I'll go down the line from Ambassador Kyota through to Paul. What are your expectations and how quickly you think you would be able to move forward in pushing for that kind of plan so that we can get those veterans services offered on your island? How long would you like it to take and what would you set out?
For the BA, we would welcome the discussion as soon as possible, because as I said earlier, many of our veterans who are living in Palau are suffering a lot. The term PTSD, or we have a law in Palau called PGSD, so I get these two mixed up. But I think from January until today, we have, I believe, like 3 or 4 suicides. So, we welcome the discussion with VA as soon as possible. But again, this letter that was received yesterday, and I sent it to President already, I hope that will speed up things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Soram.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Obviously, we're not different from Palau and Marshall Islands because of the remoteness of our islands. That speaks to the challenges that our veterans face. Access to benefits, to health benefits, traveling to Guam or traveling to Hawaii to be able to receive these benefits. So I think we can speak in general terms for now in terms of getting access to health benefits for our veterans. Like I said, it's encouraging to hear the Department of VA coming out with a plan, and we will be looking at that and looking at the various challenges. Because when you talk about distance, you're also talking about not only access, but you're talking about cost. Those kind of things will have to be factored in. But as we go through the negotiations on what works for the FSM or what works for Palau, then obviously we'll get to that point where we lay out those. But just top of my head, those are some of the issues that we can speak to.
Right. You are each sovereign nations. You each have your own essentials. I saw the islands. They're all kind of different from islands that were formed from volcanoes falling to islands that were formed from volcanoes exploding. I mean, and each creates unique barriers and opportunities, right, in terms of where you could build and other things. Ambassador Paul, what is your thought on the timeline of how quickly it could proceed now that you've received the letter and now that there's an opening for a plan?
Thank you very much for the question. The Marshall Islands is ready right now. Mm-hmm. We're ready to move forward with it. And because we feel that, our veterans, they've given a lot. I think it's incumbent upon us to do what we can to provide, get them the benefits that they've earned and deserve. My boss, the foreign minister, is a 20-year U.S. Army veteran. Mm. So he's very keen on seeing this, and he has made this a priority along with the president and the cabinet. So we're ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And with that, my time is almost up, and I yield back.
I will now recognize Chairman Westerman for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, ambassadors, for being here today, and send greetings to each of your countries, and appreciation for the hospitality and the way that we were able to work together to get COFA passed. And I think everybody from the freely associated states to the administration to Congress is happy that we've got COFA passed, and I think we would all just like to see it implemented a little bit faster. And on the VA issue, I know that, Madam Chair, it was several years ago, we visited American Samoa, and that's an issue in American Samoa even, and the expensive flights to Hawaii. It seemed like if we could invest that money in better hospitals and healthcare services closer to where the veterans are, that could benefit everyone. But as we look at implementing COFA, I know from the testimony from the administration, it sounded like they felt like they were working towards getting everything implemented. The data that we've seen looks like it's taking too long from my perspective, but I would like to get your perspective on what is the #1 priority that the administration and the FAS should be working on from your country's perspective. What should be top priority right now, and what would you like to see happen as soon as possible? And we'll start with Mr. Kyota.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a very tough question. Because, we have a lot of things that we want to start. So it's very hard to pick one. But I think one of the things this administration is hoping to start is the hospital. Because the hospital is located in a very low coastal area. And when we have a storm, the water can fill up the floor. And it has happened before, and some patients have been evacuated to a higher ground building next to the hospital. So although it's not specifically funded under the compact, we're planning to have that built as soon as possible. So now, I think we have begun a first survey, and we have identified a public land, which is on a very high land that we want to start at.
So the healthcare issue is where you think the #1 priority is. Mr. Soram, what would you like to see happen with the implementation of COFA as soon as possible?
Thank you very much, Chairman Westerman. Perhaps not a priority, but I can tell you that the hotel visit was very welcome in the islands, and if you have more of those, that would be very encouraging. And I think to see members of the Congress and hotel staff in the islands is a good thing. So for one, I can say that. But like I said in my testimony, we are very pleased with the progress of implementation. I think everyone is trying to do what we can from our end and from the U.S. end in trying to implement the progress. There has been a few challenges here and there, but I think we'll get through. Obviously, the one that just because we didn't know until today and until the letter is perhaps with the Veterans Affairs. And as I also stated in my testimony, the issue with the Social Security Administration, that they have not issued guidelines on specific to our citizens accessing Social Security supplemental income, which was set out in that. Those are some of the things. But generally speaking, we're pleased with the progress. GEMCO just met not too long ago. So that process is on its own track and happening. My colleague John Brewer also testified to upcoming meeting with the Compact Trust Fund. So that is also on its own track. So
it's good to hear that you're pleased with the progress. I want to give Mr. Paul a second to respond.
I have 1 second. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. For us, to be honest, I think the processes are working. Whether it's the GEMFAC, ours is GEMFAC. But the one thing that we want to, our expectations regarding the trust fund agreement. Now this is brand new. the trust fund agreement, the two purposes of the trust fund, but specifically the trust fund section that addresses the nuclear legacy. And as I made the statement, made in my oral statement, the points from Presidential Envoy Yoon, he specifically said the purpose of this trust fund is to address the extraordinary needs of those populations that were displaced due to the nuclear testing program. So now this is a totally brand new part of the agreement. So we have to work through that with the U.S. government. Obviously we have our own interpretations of the rules and the law. Obviously the U.S. will have theirs. So we look forward to that discussion. But I think the overall message, and we should not forget what the trust funds were established for. It's so that the leaders and the people that were affected by the testing, they know what's best for their people. So I think when we discuss those programs, we should keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, and Madam Chair, I yield back.
I thank the witnesses for their testimony. I will now recognize Representative LaMalfa for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple for the ambassadors as well here on the situation with China has a pattern of offering what we call debt diplomacy in the Pacific and other areas for infrastructure and such. And the loans that are put out seem to have a pattern of having very difficult terms for some nations to be able to repay, which then gives China leverage over maybe any country that might be in that position, ones that were friends of the U.S. For example, the United States does not tend to put our friends into a position with agreements it has that gives incredible leverage over our government friends and other governments to have to do sometimes extreme things in order to get out of that loan situation, get out of that debt, thereby maybe perhaps losing their sovereignty or even their dignity of what they would have to do in terms of with China. So, Mr. Kyota, the importance of this Indo-Pacific partnerships in your testimony is indeed being made, clear to all of us here. So, in earlier testimony, pressure on Palau and the Marshall Islands continues to happen. So, what do you think can be done by the United States to help deal with these outside pressures? Anybody on the panel, Mr. Kyota?
Thank you. Palau is one of the few countries around the world that recognizes Taiwan. So we don't have any debt with China, and we're proud of that. I recall one Pacific Island Forum a few years ago. One of the countries in the South Pacific introduced a resolution to ask the forum to pay or to request China to forgive the debts that they owe. We didn't support the resolution because, we're, as I said, one of the few countries that recognizes Taiwan. I think what the U.S., what we want to see the U.S. do is to have more presence because, my president wants to say that presence is deterrent because we know we have caught a few Chinese ships in our water, and the two recent ones were right above the cable, the optic cable cable line. So we want to see the U.S. More presence, especially the Coast Guard, more patrol around the area, because that way it would deter Chinese from coming to our waters.
You think the Coast Guard would be the best medium, not necessarily the U.S. Navy? Or
Well, Coast Guard now does some patrolling around our water, but I mean, even the Navy would be even better.
Certainly. Okay. And I appreciate that courageous position on recognition of Taiwan for what that's worth. So thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Soram, it was outlined that previously the People's Republic of China seeks to expand its influence in the FAS and again, doing more coercive things in the region. Would you, can you go into a little more detail on what you see that the activities of the People's Republic of China is doing in this coercion and in this pressure, et cetera, and how's that making life difficult with trade or with other aspects of what Micronesia is dealing with?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. TFSM is the only one of the 3 FAS countries that has a relationship with China, with PRC. We have a diplomatic relation with PRC dated back to 1989. So our contact with the Chinese is within the scope of our relationship. With regards to your question on loans, the government has made that conscious decision, a position that we have taken since we established relations with China, that we only take grants from Chinese and no loans. So up until now, that has been the position of the government. But given as well that our relations with China is secondary to what we have with the United States, there is no country compared to our relations with the United States. That being said as well, in terms of our dealings with the Chinese, it's very much within the scope of Title III of the Compact. This is on security and defense. So anytime we move in that direction and we feel that there is an infringement on Title III of the Compact, then we know where our priorities are and where our positions are.
Okay, Ambassador, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sorry my time has expired, so I have to yield back. So thank you, panelists. Appreciate it.
I thank the witnesses for their testimony. I will now recognize Representative Gonzalez Colon for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, ambassadors, for being here. First of all, I need to thank the Madam Chair and the chairman of this committee and all members that, with a very fast pace, literally approved this COFA agreement. I mean, I feel honored to be part of this committee in a process like this. More than 20 years, and a lot of conversations and a lot of things happening in the Pacific. And I sense that the approval of this agreement showcase the real importance of the relationship of the United States and the islands, and the Pacific Islands, and the current threat from Communist China in the Pacific. So in that sense, I want to say thank you to the committee and all staffers that worked out that agreement, and ambassadors for making that happen. In that sense, I just want one comment, Ambassador Kyota. In your written testimony, you stated that Palau strongly supports congressional approval of the administration proposed language to extend the federal programs and service agreements, and clarify that new agreements approval and insurance of bank deposit, and clarify the agreements approval and insurance of bank deposits. But the administration proposed language for clarifying congressional approval of this includes a provision to provide the president with the authority to enter into force any agreement to amend, change, or terminate the federal programs and service agreement. My concern here will be, there are concerns that this language may allow the president to unilaterally enter into force an agreement to terminate the federal programs and service agreement with Palau. Will it be correct to say that Palau will not want to see any unilateral actions by the president, and that is important for Congress to maintain its oversight authority?
We ask that the Congress find the appropriate and appropriate acceptable language to the amendment to this matter. It doesn't have to be. Yeah, and I agree that we agree with you. But Palau wants an appropriate language. It doesn't have to be what the administration proposed, but I think we need a language that good for both U.S. and Palau.
And we agree with you. My concern was that the language the president is providing gave him an opportunity and the authority to put into force any agreement to amend, change, or terminate that federal programs on the islands. And that language specifically give him unilaterally that force. So that's the reason I want to take clear what Palau is thinking about this. In that sense, then would it be correct to state that Palau will also support congressional approval of language that differs from the administration proposal as long as this language addresses the various challenges to enacting the new federal programs and service agreement in a timely manner?
Yes, I strongly agree, and if any termination of any program, it should be discussed first and be bilaterally agreed upon.
And I agree. I agree with you. That's the reason I want to make that clear, because in the written testimony, it may sound that you may want the president of the United States to have unilaterally decide to terminate any kind of relationship with Palau, and we don't want that. I believe that it should be in a bilateral way. So it will be, therefore, correct to say that Palau is not requesting for Congress to support only the administration proposed language. That issue, I mean, we can, whenever we always put the importance of the federal programs and service agreement and clarify any of those insurance of bank deposit, you will be okay with that.
It's like I said, we stand to agree on any program or services. If the U.S. want to terminate that, we need to talk. We need to agree before it is terminated.
Okay, so it can be changed. Thank you, and I appreciate all the ambassadors for coming today here. I yield back.
I thank the witnesses for the valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we will ask you to respond to these in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the committee must submit questions to the committee clerk by 5:00 p.m. on Friday, September 13, 2024. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for these responses. If there is no further business, without objection, this committee stands adjourned.